5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Okay, you guys have questions and we have some answers today. Rebecca and Davey here with the Divorce Hub, and what we've basically done is just create a YouTube channel that we wish existed when we were going through divorces so we didn't have to piece together 47 videos from 1979. So this is a hot topic that has come up on every single conversation that we've ever had with somebody who's divorcing. When am I ready to date? Can I date? Should I date? How did you guys find each other? And so we are going to talk about it for a few videos. I don't know how long it's going to take us, but this is video number 1. Am I ready to date? Should I date? What do I do about dating?
Yeah, this is the spicy content, and people see
not the spicy content.
Well, not that.
This is just questions people ask us that we haven't wanted to answer yet.
Yeah, spicy content. I realized.
Yeah, I can't say that on a video.
Okay. Well, this is the kind of one of the more controversial topics, not just with the entire overarching idea of divorce and moving on, but even with our relationship too, because we move quick. And I think there's a lot of reasons why, which we'll get to in a later time. But This is the question where someone sought us out and asked this question: how do you know when you're ready? Am I ready to go ahead and start dating? And that's a tough one. But it definitely starts with answering 2 really big and important questions that kind of cover most of the bases here. And the first question, which we'll cover today, is, are you ready? Are you ready personally? And that question, which is number 1, is different from what we'll cover in another time, which is, are you going to be ready for what happens?
Yeah, you ready for everybody
as a result of making that choice?
It could get rough.
But those 2 subjects can't be mixed. You really can't mix them because they're independent of each other. And you got to really focus on yourself first before you can worry about social pressure. So
the first question
is, it's are you ready?
Are you ready to date? And for me, when somebody asks me, Rebecca, like, should I start dating? How do I know when it's time for me to start dating? I ask them a simple question: what went wrong in your first marriage? And it's not because I want the gory details. And it's not because if it was so bad, they might need longer. There's some timeline trajectory that people need. The reason I ask that question is because the people who can reiterate back to me what went wrong in their marriage with some accountability and some empathy, whether or not they were the perpetrator and the reason the whole thing blew up or not. But if someone can talk back to me and tell me what went wrong, how things fell apart, what their situation is now, without totally degrading the person that's on the other side of that, in most cases, the person who they had kids with on the other side of that, that tells me that they've worked through a lot of their trauma, and now maybe they are ready to open themselves back up to love, as opposed to the person who I'm like, well, what went wrong in your marriage? And all they do is go on a 10-minute soliloquy of how horrible their ex-partner was. To me, that's like, hey, I think that you need to be able to tell that story and honestly believe that you had some accountability in it, and that it's not just a trauma dump on whoever the poor next person is that you're ready to date. So that's one of the first questions that I ask people is, what happened in your marriage? What went wrong the first time?
Can you just quickly say more about, you kind of described 2 people, the person that can say, hey, I messed some things up too, and the other person who's just not even close to there because all they want to do is light things on fire. What are the things that make those 2 people switch from one to the other? How does the person who started bashing that first person, then one day they don't just magically show up and they're like, oh, you know what? I'll take some accountability here too. What changes?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, this is not the healthy way that it should change, but the story that I hear over and over and over again from men and women who seek our support and guidance is finally one day their ex-partner, who I'm going to assume that the people who are seeking our guidance are back on the straight and narrow, because when they come to us bashing their spouse, we're like, hold up, try that again, and here's why. So let's say on the other side of it, the people who we are not encouraging to do the self-work, all of a sudden one day something switches for them. I think it's usually because they find somebody. And all of a sudden now their trauma that was on me, now they have a distraction. They're happy with this person. They're fulfilled sexually. They're no longer jealous of what's going on the other side. Like now they think they've won. And so when someone thinks they've won, they'll a lot of times start to retell the story in a different way. Or you hear a lot of times where it's like, well, they had 2 or 3 bad ones, but now they have a good new partner, and that new partner wants me in their life, or they want to try to work as a co-parent. And so I think typically there's a person that's a facilitator, even though that's not the healthy reason. That's what I see a lot.
Yeah, that's like the Band-Aid fix, right? That we know does work. I mean, you hear about all the stories of like, wow, my ex started becoming really nice to me once they started dating themselves. Obviously, the other alternative to switch from that first person who burns the other person down to, hey, I did some things wrong, is obviously a long road of therapy and empathy and understanding and care. And so you hope for that ideal situation, but typically you're right.
What do you think? Less than 20% of people who are divorced actually go through the therapy. They just remarry again.
Right. They remarry again, date again, have some sort of self-imposed timeline. Yeah, they jump back into it. I mean, and that's more of a drought of people leaning on mental health. And it's really, frankly, someone comes to us and they're at this phase.
Mm-hmm. Hey, can I date? Should I date? When do I know it's time to date?
My advice to this individual who spurred us sitting down to do this was number one therapist, number one therapist, number one therapist. Mm-hmm. I'm going to tell you some things about our experience and what we found in these other couples and people that reach out to us. But also, no matter what I say, only a licensed professional is going to be able to help you break this down.
Right.
Yeah, that's one. That's the first piece, like you said, is to know what you did wrong and share some accountability. But I would venture that there's another layer down.
Yeah, talk about that.
A subterranean layer of things that were wrong. And I think there are often in marriages and divorces, there are overt problems. These are the salacious things: infidelity, addiction, physical abuse, mental abuse, etc.
Mental health issues that somebody's not getting fixed. Yeah, there's big problems that you're like, well, they had a gambling problem, that's why we got divorced.
That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm not talking about the overt problem. And what I'm talking about is the underlying things that you know now because you're healed or you've moved on, that you were also doing wrong that the other person didn't know anything about.
Yeah, hang on. So I think how I heard you ask people this question is, do you know where you went wrong in your marriage? And that you're like, not that you had an affair, not that you drink too much wine on Thursdays or whatever. Do you know the little things? And ask that question that you ask people, because I think that'll be helpful.
Yeah. Do you know the things that you did wrong that the other person didn't even see? And those are things like, did you create deep and drastic emotional codependencies toward each other? Did you have vast amounts of insecurity over things that your partner was not responsible for? Did you have issues where you would avoid and show up a certain way? And again,
how important were your parents in your relationship versus your other partner?
Right.
Like there's so many things that are underlying that if all you care about is that other person cheated and you didn't come back and address all the things that you did to make them want to escape the marriage, not that either's okay, but you've got to do both of those.
Yeah, it could, because ultimately the question is, are you ready to date? Well, are you healed enough to not bring those bad things you did in your first marriage into the next one? And what we see so many times at this phase, when somebody's like ready to start dating, is they immediately jump into the same patterns of the bad parts of their marriage.
I have a good example to share. Yeah. Tell the avocado story. Because that was something I brought into our relationship that like freaked you out.
Oh man, that was incredible. I think it was the same day, if not the next day. We had done a trip to the grocery store. Okay, go. It's kind of cute at the time because we're figuring out how each other shops for groceries, which was cute. But I love avocados. She picked the avocados. No big deal. She even was like, held them up and was like, I don't really know. I don't buy a lot of avocados. I trust your judgment. Get home, unpack.
Wait, you said that about me because I know the avocados.
You know the avocados. I do not. So get home, unpack the groceries, set the avocados in the vegetable fruit bowl area. Some time passes, and out of nowhere,
no, we were making something.
Oh yeah, we were going to make tacos.
With the avocado.
And you're like, hey, Davey, good job picking the avocados. These are really good. I just stopped, and I was like, what do you mean? And you're like, you doubled down, and you were like, well, I thought these are really good, and you did a great job picking them. And I was like, challenge flag. No. Wait a minute. Why did you? Then you caught yourself. When I called it out, you caught yourself. And I was like, why did you give me credit for something that I did not do? Why did you?
I did that because that was a trauma that I was bringing in from my old marriage where I had to build the other person up in ways that even maybe they didn't do. And it was like this falsity and this like almost a disrespect. Like I have to compliment you for doing something that you did because if I don't, you're going to be so insecure that we're going to get in a fight over it. So what I did is I just had every little opportunity, even if it was fake and a lie, to compliment the person that I was with because I thought that they were less secure than me. A good way to say it?
Yeah,
it was a big trauma. And looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, how many times did I do that I didn't even know I did it?
I think what I saw was somebody who was really sweet and really accommodating and was finding excuses to be kind.
Okay, but that's not the point. Is like that was a trauma that I.
Yeah, I know, but I mean,
you don't have to compliment me about it. That's your trauma.
Well, but I mean, that's what you can, I mean, imagine the emotional codependency coming from the other person,
Right.
right? That they're going to receive in your trauma because you send that out and then they pick that up and then they get used to it.
That's right. I was so dependent
Right.
that we couldn't even do a grocery store trip without me having to fill you full of false or
Yeah.
true compliments.
Here's an exercise I've told people. I don't know if this is any good or not, but hey, write down the 10 things or the 5 things or the 3 things that you care the most about that are important to you now post-divorce that you want in your next partner or relationship.
Mhm.
And then when you date, if you don't start getting those things, the only person you're going to disappoint is yourself. And just like a nice house, when you buy it, you're not going to check all 10 out of 10 boxes. As those boxes, you remove the check from the person that you date, that they don't align in values and things like that.
Yeah.
What are we doing? You just got divorced. Get this relationship right.
You got to be really clear and have some very clarifying expectations, because what we both found is you're going to be so starved for love and affection post-divorce, not to mention the pain of divorce, you're not going to see things clearly. So if you can sit down and put pen to paper on like these 3 things are really important. If a person doesn't have it, run it through that filter. You're like your own HR department.
Well, you had things that you told me early on. I don't remember if you said this, but one of them that I felt stood out was that you wanted to make sure that your next partner had really solid friendships that were completely independent of what you and I were doing.
I did say that.
Right?
I did say that.
You got to be really intentional to say, that's the kind of thing that I want in a new partner. That's specific, it's nuanced, and something that I don't think a lot of people think about. So this is an exercise people need to go through to say, if I could pick my next partner out of a store with every feature, what features would I ask for? And not doing it is probably a sign that you're going to fall into the same old patterns of the bad things that were overt or subversively wrong in your first marriage.
And that really leads into the last part of this video that I want to talk about. When I have friends that are ready to date, or they want to date, or they're lonely or whatever, and they're like, I think I'm going to go on a date. The question that I like to ask is, would you be interested in the kind of guy or girl that would be interested in this version of you? And what I mean is, get all your bad stuff out. Like, in a divorce, you have to use that time to come face to face with all of the most broken pieces about yourself, and not to degrade yourself, because you have to love those pieces too, but to get really clear on what that person might be attracted to. Because the pieces of you that are broken, when Davey and I met, I had a guide in place that I was like, I'm not going to date anybody. I had no male contact, not even date. I'm not going to talk to, I'm not going to send text messages. I'm not going to be on the phone at night. There are no men in my life until I get my house sold. And it was just a date, because I'm like, what I knew though was the version of me that was experiencing divorce and having panic attacks in my closet and crying in my bed and still hoping my ex would text me because I was lonely at night. Like, the person that was experiencing all of those things, the man that's attracted to that woman, I didn't want him. And I knew I didn't want a man that was so broken. He was settling for the person that was experiencing all of that. So I was like, just don't date Rebecca. And so that's a challenge that I ask people, is like, hey, would you want the man that wants to date you? Put it all down, look at it. It's not like you're going to be here forever, but would you want the woman that would have been interested in that version of you that was sending hateful messages to your ex because you're so hurt? No. And so making sure that you know where you're at, and that you're putting a version of yourself out there that you want to get involved with that caliber of people, that's a really big one for me.
Well, and I think the thing that I would address too is to say, being ready to date is not something that you can be just because you're lonely.
Right. You can go find friends.
Hey, and you can find other ways to occupy your time that is not dating.
Sand volleyball. Great activity.
Right.
Great. We love that.
Church activities.
Nonprofits. There's really good people who hang out at nonprofits. You know what I mean?
Therapy.
Therapists.
That would be great.
Go to evening therapy.
Support groups. There are support groups.
There
right?
are.
But I think the point is that what we see sometimes is these people have ejected themselves or been ejected out of a thing where they had somebody they could rely on. Even if they were mad and angry at each other, they could rely on them for childcare and finances and shelter and safety. And now you don't have those things. Those have all been sucked out. And so you get lonely quickly. But you can be lonely, not ready to date, and be dating all at the same time. And that's where there's some really unfun stuff that happens in people's lives.
Then you get up with it. It gets messy. So those are the things that we tell people. You're ready to date when you can, or maybe you're ready when you can tell the story of your divorce without totally bashing the other person, and when you've personally addressed some things, and then get back out there. That's, I think, our next video, right?
Yeah. And I would say that Again, these questions are independent. Whether
Mm-hmm.
you're ready internally is completely separate from, are you ready for the fire that's about to come when you make this decision? You're like, you know what? I am going to go date somebody because I'm going to do it for me at whatever stage.
Great. Yeah.
Now you've got a whole nother thing that we want to put you through, which is, guess what? Here's what's about to come. And that will be episode 2.